everyone, welcome back to my channel for a brand new mystery with Molly. If you are new around here, if you've never seen my face before, then hi, my name is Molly, if you hadn't just guessed. And I post true crime videos like this every single week, usually on a Tuesday at 7 PM UK time. So if you think that's something that you might want to stick around for, then definitely subscribe. I would love to have you here. Also turn on your post notification bell so that YouTube will notify you every single time that I post. You may notice that this week's video is a little shorter than my usual videos, and that's because this week we're talking about the Grundy County Jane Doe case. And just like with a lot of other Doe cases, there isn't too much information available online about this case because we don't know the identity of the victim. So yeah, a bit of a shorter one this week. I hope you don't mind. I know that a lot of you guys really like my longer ones. Last week's one was really long. It was over an hour, so I needed to catch myself up a bit. But it's still a really interesting case nonetheless, and I think it's so important to give attention and spread awareness to Jane and John Doe cases in the hopes that we can give these people their names back. And actually, I do feel like this Jane Doe victim that we're going to talk about today will have her name back soon. I feel like investigators are really close to cracking this case, but obviously we'll talk a bit more about that later. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling and we shall just get into the story. So this case took place in 1976 in Seneca, which is a village in Grundy County in Illinois in the US. It was October the 2nd, 1976, when a man who was a farmer was driving his tractor around some fields in Seneca. This farmer man had his granddaughter with him. I think he was just showing her around the fields and letting her go on the tractor with him. They just seemed to be having a really nice time together. That was until they came across something lying in a nearby ditch along the side of a road on Route 6. At first glance, the farmer thought that this thing that he saw in the ditch was just a deer, and so he called over his granddaughter to show her. However, as he got closer, it was then when he realised that it wasn't a deer. He'd actually found the body of a young woman and she was dead in this ditch. So the farmer was obviously very shocked and he went straight back to his house and he contacted the police. Officers soon arrived at the scene and it was pretty clear to them straight away that they were dealing with a homicide. Now this woman was a young African-American woman. She was completely naked in the ditch, suggesting that she had been sexually assaulted, although I'm actually unsure as to whether this was ever confirmed in her autopsy. So she was found completely naked. However, whoever had done this to her had actually wrapped a red patterned like cardigan sweater around her head, and it's believed that this sweater probably belonged to the deceased woman. So it looked like the perpetrator had taken this sweater off her and wrapped it around her head. I'll put a picture of the sweater on screen now. It's quite a unique pattern, I thought. As well as this, a green plastic bag had been put on top of this sweater and tied around this woman's head with some black electrical tape. It was also clear that her cause of death was from a gunshot wound. She had been shot once in the back of the head with a .38 caliber revolver, which would have probably killed her instantly. So her body was taken for a post-mortem, which interestingly concluded that this woman had only been dead for about a day. She had been killed just the day before her body was found, which is shocking considering that she is still unidentified to this day. Usually you'll find with John and Jane Doe cases that when their bodies are found, they've normally been dead for quite a while, for years and years in most cases, which is why it's so difficult for them to be identified, because their bodies are so badly decomposed. In most cases, they are literally just skeletal remains when they're discovered. However, this Jane Doe was found literally the day after her death, and yet we still have no idea who she was. But here is what we do know about her. So she was an African-American female, most likely between the ages of 15 and 27. She had black hair, which was cut quite short, and she had brown eyes. She was about 5'7" 6'7" in height and weighed around 150 pounds. She also had a scar on her right hip and a little mark on her lower abdomen, which was determined to be either just another scar or a birthmark. And obviously, like I said before, she had been shot in the head. It was clear that this was a homicide. So not only were they trying to identify this woman, but they were also trying to find her killer. So the police began their investigation and they tried to find out who this woman was. And I believe they appealed to the public, but to be honest, no one really came forward with any information. According to some sources online, there were a couple of tips from members of the public saying that they believed this woman was a local sex worker. However, this was looked into and could not be confirmed. But apart from that, it doesn't look like many people came forward really. No one seemed to know who this woman was. Authorities did look into various missing persons reports from around that time to see if they could match any of them, to see if any of them were this woman, but they had no luck. They also released to the public like drawings and paintings done by artists and reconstruction images of what this Jane Doe looked like, so I'll put all of those on screen now. They hoped that someone would see these pictures and recognise her and come forward to the police, but once again there was nothing really. Investigators looked into this case for about 2 months, but in the end they just didn't really have anything to go on. Obviously back then in 1976 they didn't have the kind of forensic technology that we have today, so without, you know, tips and leads and information from the public, they were really stuck. They didn't have anything to go on. They didn't have any leads that they could investigate. And so about 6 weeks after this woman's body was discovered on Thanksgiving Day in 1976, this Jane Doe was buried in an unmarked grave at the Bracerville Gardner Cemetery in Illinois, and she would remain there for over 4 decades with no developments in her case. But in 2017, the Grundy County Jane Doe case was reopened by the Grundy County Coroner's Office, and they hope that after all these years, they might finally able to give this Jane Doe her name back. Obviously, by this point, DNA and forensic technology had come such a long way, and so in December of 2018, over 40 years after she was buried, Jane Doe's body was exhumed in the hopes that they might be able to collect some DNA from her remains that could be tested. And it worked. In April of the following year, they managed to develop a DNA profile of the Grundy County Jane Doe. This DNA profile was entered into CODIS, which is a national DNA database, in the hopes that one day a match will flag up. Brandon Johnson, who is the deputy coroner investigating this case, reached out and asked for help from the DNA Doe Project, which is an organisation that I believe I've spoken about in previous John and Jane Doe videos. The DNA Doe Project is a volunteer-based organisation that uses genetic genealogy to try and identify various Jane and John Does. So basically, they use genealogical DNA testing to try and identify any past and present family members of the Doe victims. And although they haven't identified the Grundy County Jane Doe through this just yet, they did help investigators gather a lot of information and clues about who this Jane Doe was. In January of 2020, so just earlier this year, they released some updates to the public regarding this case. They announced that they now believe that this Jane Doe was born between 1948 and 1960, and they believe that her parents were likely from Selma, which is a city in Alabama. One article that I read that was published pretty recently stated that they believed this. They believed that she was from Alabama because they actually made a genetic match to a couple of extended relatives of the victim, and they were from Alabama. They lived in Alabama. Now, I couldn't find too much information about these genetic matches. All it said was that this match was from a large extended family tree. So I think they're trying to like narrow it down now and find out which family she was from in this huge family tree, if that makes sense. But from these matches, investigators now have reason to believe that one of Jane Doe's grandparents may have had the last name Calhoun. I'm not really sure how that's pronounced, I'll put it on the screen. And that one great-grandparent may have had the last name Harris. They also theorise that Jane Doe probably had siblings that were just unaware that she existed, and that her family may have also had connections to Ohio. So like I said at the start of this video, it feels like they are really close to cracking this case, to solving this case. It's probably only a matter of time until this Jane Doe is identified. I think that she will probably be identified by the end of the year. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I'm literally going to be checking up on this case every single day because I really feel like investigators are so close to solving it, because they've literally found a match to a family tree. And yes, it's a huge extended family tree, but they found a match, so I just feel like it's only a matter of time before they find out her identity. As usual with my unsolved cases, I will leave some contact information and contact details in the description box for anyone who is watching this video that thinks they might know something about this case. Did that make sense? It's always a long shot, but you never know. The information is linked down there if you need it. But yeah, that is it for this case. That is the case of the Grundy County Jane Doe. I will obviously keep you guys updated and let you know of any recent developments in the case. Make sure you're following me on my Twitter and my Instagram, because if there are any updates or developments in this case, I will probably let you know there first. Please do let me know in the comments any suggestions you may have for other Jane and John Doe cases that I can cover. I really want to use my platform to start talking about these cases more. Obviously, I will still continue to cover my solved cases and my other unsolved cases, but I do want to start talking about Doe cases a lot more, because they're just so important, and I feel like the best chance we have of solving these cases and giving these victims their names back is if we spread awareness and spreading their reconstruction pictures and images, because it literally just takes one person, the right person, to see that picture and think, I recognise that person from years and years ago. I'm literally just rambling at this point, but yeah, please do let me know your suggestions for other Doe cases I can cover, and just any cases I can cover. I'm always looking for new cases. Before I go, I just want to give a special shout out to the members of my Patreon page. Thank you so much for your support, guys. If anyone else wants to become a member of our little Patreon family, the link will be in the description box. Please do give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you again next week for another mystery with Mollie. Bye guys!